Well, hey, you guys, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm just pulling up my notes here. I am Janeen Alley. I am super excited to be with you. You are listening to Becoming the CEO of Your Life today. And today I'm going to be talking about how to create the freedom to authentically show up as yourself. And I am going first today. I'm actually going to record this episode in one take. There will be no edits today. And I'm going to talk about why in just a second. But you guys have been on this journey with me. If you have listened to the podcast over the last several episodes, I have talked about this transition that I feel like I'm going through in my business. And it's been hard for me to create content for the podcast because I feel very unsettled in what's blooming what is going to happen. And so it's been hard for me to create content for you all because I'm kind of in the thick of it. And I feel like in a lot of aspects, the dust hasn't settled. So last week I talked about shedding the skin and kind of this process of this rebirth that's happening in my business. So I am going to be speaking a little bit more to that today. One of my kids decided to just print something off here on the side. So again, no edits today. It's part of the show because this is real life, right? So I wanted to just start off by talking about the vision because it has gotten a little bit more clear. In fact, it's probably, it feels a lot more clear this week than it did last week. And so I know that it's going to continue to morph and change over time. And you guys are awesome for just kind of coming along with me and seeing how this is going to unfold as the year unfolds. I think in the next couple of months, is going to become more concrete. And then I'm going to be able to run with some really fun and exciting things. I feel this element of excitement in this creation process and watching this kind of come forward. But it has taken quite a lot of quiet time and introspective energy and not freaking out about things, which, in the past I would have totally done. So for me, what has really come up over the last, I would say, 8 months or so is becoming the CEO of your life really means being able to develop unapologetic trust in yourself to create the life you want to have. And that often includes creating a business. So I am really, really good at the productivity piece of this, but I feel like this is kind of the tip of the iceberg. I am really good at helping women to stop hustling and trying to do it all and focus so that they can get things done that they long to do. But there are layers underneath this that have to be in place in order for you to execute from your heart center. And this is so important because when you're executing from that place, when your head and your heart are completely aligned, then you're showing up more authentically as yourself and you're not swimming in seas of self-doubt and in seas of like questioning and comparing and feeling jealous and all of these things that keep us stuck. I am also really good at advocating for women's overall health and well-being and giving them permission to set this time aside, not just as another box to check, not just checking the workout box for the day, but as a way to really fill their bucket and boost their energy and bring the joy and excitement back into what their life looks like and all the different things that they're doing, because nobody wants to create, nobody wants to live their life from this place of deficiency or like a deficit, right? Which often happens when we are trying to create from an empty space, right? We haven't filled the bucket. And so we're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel with our energy and our creative juices and all of it. And it just doesn't feel good. So ultimately, what happens is in order for you to joyfully set this time aside, for you to take care of yourself, for you to create something that fills your heart with joy and love for other people, there has to be a foundation. That foundation has to be built in self-trust. And that self-trust, that aspect of self-trust comes from a lot of different things. And this is what I'm really going to be focusing on moving forward in my programs and in my marketing and all this. This is really the base. And nervous system regulation plays a huge part in that, because you have to have a relationship with yourself. You have to have that connection with yourself. Otherwise, if you don't have that, you can't set the time aside. You are just checking boxes. You are just hustling through your life and your day. And it feels scrambled and it feels hurried and you feel behind and all that stuff that we don't want. So at this point in my business, what's interesting is, even though I've been really focusing on becoming peacefully productive over the last couple of years, people are still coming to me because they're interested in the things that I used to talk about in the podcast. And I'm seeing now how this is all coming together. And it's really, really exciting for me. People are still getting help from me to lose weight and focus on nutrition and create their protocol that they want to stick to and becoming healthier. And like I said, just taking better care of themselves. So they're not just physically well, but they're emotionally and they're mentally well as well. Because like I said, nobody wants to be running their life or their business or their household feeling burned out and feeling like they don't have anything else to give, right? Or not, that's not what we want. And oftentimes we get, it's not just that, but oftentimes we get stuck feeling like there is like a way or a path. We hire a coach, like a business coach, and they tell us the things. And for me, I know I was, straight A student. I did everything that my coaches told me to do, like almost to like my detriment, because it ended up being something that wasn't necessarily aligned with me. I was doing it their way. And I love learning from other people, but I have also learned there is so much wisdom in taking a step back and being quiet and being very intuitive about, what do I actually want this to look like? And this has really been coming forth, like I said, over the last, 7 or 8 months or so. So I'm running in a new direction, and sometimes not necessarily running. Sometimes it's more like a meditative walk. Sometimes it literally is, meditating on my back and being very quiet. But I am moving in this new direction, and it feels very vulnerable, and it still feels very different, because at one point in the game, I've mentioned this before on the podcast, I had some advice from somebody who was very well-meaning, that was looking at my stuff. They were looking at my marketing materials, particularly a webinar that I was doing. And they're like, "You're not getting any sales from this." And I'm like, "You're right, I'm not." And they're like, "Yeah, because you're speaking to too many things. You're talking about productivity, you're talking about wellness, you're talking about all these things." And I was kind of bummed. But at the same time, I also knew what he was saying. I also understood what he was talking about. But now I'm realizing I just wasn't speaking to the right people with the right message, because this really, I feel like, is my heart's song. This is really what I feel like I'm good at and I can help people with. And the key is for me to create a vision that other people can get on board with. And I feel like the clients that I have get it. They are on board with the vision. They do. I just need to keep at it. I need to keep honing this so that it's like, yes, for the people who are meant to be working with me. But I've realized that it feels different, and it has to feel different. I'm super excited to talk, like I said, about the wellness and the fitness and the feeding yourself really, really well. And yet at the same time, there are these elements of surrender of I'm surrendering who I think I am and what I think this is going to look like, to who I actually am and what I'm actually going to create. And like I said, there is this element of excitement, and yet there's also this element of raw vulnerability. I totally slaughtered that, and that's okay. We're just going to keep going. There is this element of raw vulnerability that feels very scary. Like I said, one take today. So this is what it feels like to step into more of who I really am. It's more authentic, and it's actually really liberating for me to record this podcast today, knowing that it was going to be one take. And I'm going to talk about this in just a second. It feels like this. There's this element of excitement because there's going to be no edits afterwards. There's not going to be any time taken to do that. And I feel this connection to you all, because I really am sharing so much more from from my heart space than I ever have before. And it feels scary at the same time. So all of these emotions wrapped up in one: scary, vulnerable, excited, all of it. So I am going to give you, I've given you a couple sneak peeks already on my example today. I am going to be talking about doing this with the podcast, because I used to edit my podcast in like almost to the point where it took my personality out of the podcast. And any little trip of my words or any section that I felt like, I could say that better, I would just redo that section. And sometimes I would be cutting out like 5 minutes of the podcast. Any, all of it was edited out. And in a 30-minute show, I could have up to 300 edits. I wasn't actually counting. I left that up to my software, but I could actually tell like how many little edits that I would do in an entire show. And the longer the show, of course, the more the edits that they were, and the longer it would take me to edit the show. It almost took me 3 times as long to edit a show than it did to record the podcast. So last week, I'm not sure if you could tell the difference. I didn't give myself 100% permission to do no edits on the podcast. I had about 10 or 15 edits in the entire show. And there was more of this, going back over my words if I felt like I tripped up on something or whatever it is. But today, no edits. It was kind of a challenge for myself to do this because, like I said, it is tapping into that authenticity that I feel like is really going to make a difference for me moving forward, not just in the way that I show up, but also in the way that I am able to connect with you. And the reason why I did this was because I just felt like an unedited show wasn't very professional, right? I would look at other people's stuff and I would listen to how their podcast was when I was listening to it. And you do have a way of like listening to other people's podcasts differently when you actually edit podcasts. Hopefully that makes sense. But so I was kind of listening to it and I'm like, oh man, it sounds so good. And I kind of felt like my stuff had to be like that. But what I actually like is the raw stuff. I actually like listening to my coach on a class that she is putting together without all the edits. It actually comes across as more real to me. And that is what I want. And so this is just one little way that things are changing and how I am evolving as a human being. And not to say that I'm never going to edit the show. I probably will edit the show, but like I said, it's definitely going to be on the side of like 5, 6, 10 edits in a show versus 300 edits, which was, I say that out loud. It's a little crazy. I mean, just admitting it feels vulnerable. But since I work with the nervous system, what I've noticed is there is this feeling of safety in the constriction, in constricting myself. And this is really the important part. And this is really what I want you to listen to today. There is safety in constricting yourself. Self-doubt and the self-critic feels safe, right? That inner critic, when it rears its ugly head, it sounds like, I'm not good enough. I should edit myself. Whatever I say, I'm not sure if it's true or if it's the quote unquote right answer. I'm not sure how to do this. I don't know how. All of that keeps us playing small. It keeps us safe in the cage. That's how I described it to my coach the other day when I was getting coached by her and describing this process. It feels like I have put myself in a cage and now the door is open. I'm like standing right on the precipice. And on some days I like jump out and I take flight, and other days I'm just kind of perched there, like as if I'm a bird. I'm like using my hands. If you're watching the video, I'm using my hands as my little claws on the wire rim that's there. It's okay because my nervous system doesn't know how to be free. And so this is what I am in the process of doing, is I'm retraining my nervous system to be free, to feel safe, unrestricted, and unedited. So in coaching lingo, we often talk about holding space. I think I've talked about this concept before on the podcast. And as a coach, when I'm coaching my clients, I am able to hold space for whatever comes up. It's actually the very first thing that I am trained to do as a coach, or as far as the certification that I have. It means whatever comes up is 100% okay for it to come up. It is what's meant to come up in that session. And however you feel is just right. There isn't anything wrong with the way that you feel. Because at the end of the day, emotions themselves, the energetic vibrations that we have in our body are actually neutral. They don't feel that way, but they are. It's just energy. And I say just. It's the scariest thing that can happen to us in life, but it feels that way. But at the end of the day, if you're just kind of breaking it down to the essence of what it is, it's just energy. And the energy itself isn't right. It's not wrong. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just what is. And emotions are perfectly fine. They're normal and they're human. Nothing's gone wrong, even though it feels like it, but nothing really has gone wrong when we're feeling. Now, I'm just talking about in a coaching session when I'm talking to my clients or when I'm coaching myself. If you are actually physically in an unsafe place, that is different. Okay. You want to get yourself to safety. So I'm talking about, like I said, in this coaching environment. Okay. But this is the trick. Holding space for myself means I am safe to be free. I'm not just safe to feel, but I am safe to be free. And for me, this is like one level deeper. Okay. I'm safe to be me. No matter what comes up, it's okay. And this freedom means unpredictability. It means uncertainty. It means surrender. All the things that we've been taught to be afraid of. We've been taught to be afraid of criticism. We've been taught to fail. We've been taught to fear failure, right? We've been taught to fear getting the big fat F on our assignments, right? And for me, as a coach and as a business owner, this is something, like I said, that has been almost to my detriment because I've wanted to get the A. I've wanted to do it, quote unquote, right. But that has often meant that I have become disconnected from myself in the process of doing that, to be doing it the way that my coach wants me to do it instead of the way that I want to do this. And it feels unsafe like this for a reason. It feels, like I said, unpredictable, uncertain. There's this element of surrender. All of this is for a reason. But what happens is I have to give myself permission to retrain my nervous system in the process for it to be more natural, for it to literally feel safe. This is what I want. I want these things that come up when I'm in this space of self-trust to feel like, okay, this is what we're settling into. It's like almost like walking outside without my makeup on or walking outside without my clothes on. Not just to take it a level deeper, right? I'm not quite there yet, but maybe in the dark, right? We're talking about baby steps here. Don't do that. But you know what I'm saying? It feels like you're exposed and you're seen. And so I'm in the process of training myself to feel trust in myself. So when I think about it from my conscious brain, do I trust myself? Yes, 100% without a doubt. I trust myself. However, yet the subconscious side of me still feels this unshaky ground, right? And I've got to merge these two worlds. I have to hold space for the unshakiness, and I am able to hold space for this certainty. What does this feel like in my body? What does trust feel like in my body? What is the truth of this? How does love and the truth want to move through me? These are things that I've been thinking about. What is my truth? What is my purpose? What does that trust, again, feel like? And when I'm tuned into that, then I can ask myself the question, and what is the truth? Because sometimes what the truth is isn't widely accepted. Like I said, it feels scary, right? So trust, like I said, there is this element of uncertainty to it. It feels like a stranger sometimes because I haven't trusted myself. I've trusted in other people. So it still kind of feels foggy. It feels murky. It feels muddy. It feels shy. It feels apprehensive. And on the flip side of things, at the same time, it still feels excitement, or I still feel excited about it. It feels like a rebirth is what it feels like. It feels like spring. I get so excited when I see the bright green buds of the leaves coming out on the trees. Like that for me is like, oh, I mean, angels singing, rays of sunshine streaming down from heaven. That's what it feels like. It feels like when all the baby animals are born in the springtime. One of my closest and dearest friends lives on a farm. Actually, she's been on the podcast before. Elon. Elon lives on a farm. Spring, all the babies are born, right? I've been at her house. Well, she's tried to keep baby goats alive, and she's done an amazing job at it. It's not like she tried and she failed. Although maybe that's happened. I don't know. But all the baby goats were alive when I was there, and it was exciting. And yet there was also this sense of fragility or being fragile in that moment. That's where this vulnerability and newness comes from, right? I talked about last week of a snake shedding its skin and how raw that must feel. Like the calluses haven't developed yet, and it probably feels kind of tingly at the same time, right? And this self-trust at the same time also feels like an old friend. There is this sense for me of this familiarity because I have over time developed this relationship of self-trust with myself in other arenas of my life. It's a pretty solid foundation, right? So all of this is what it feels like. I mean, this is all just to say, this is how it feels like when I am in this space of self-trust. And when I'm in this space of self-trust, then I can ask myself the question, okay, what is the truth? And this is super fun to explore. It's fun to see what comes up. I've almost been waiting for about a month for this message to arrive. My coach, when she was kind of talking about this and I was describing it as kind of this muddy, murky experience, she reminded me again that this is where, a lotus flower blooms. It actually emerges from the mud. And I just really loved that visualization of that experience because it is something beautiful that comes forth from what seems like sludge, right? And I feel like being able to hold space and be vulnerable at the same time is a beautiful balance of energy because there is this element of the masculine and the strength in holding space for yourself. I'm strong enough for you to show up as you, is what you're ultimately saying when you're holding space. I am strong enough for you to show up as yourself. And so you're balancing that with this vulnerable, with this surrender, with this yin energy. It's kind of like the blood and guts of the creation process, right? Or your ability to express your unique voice, my coach said, your melody, your heart song, your art is what is going to come forth from that. And I don't know exactly what that is going to look like. I feel like I have a much clearer picture this week than I did last week. And it's exciting and it's fun and it's also mysterious at the same time. And I feel like it's kind of a beautiful contained mess. And I'm right in the middle of it. And it's really exciting. But this is the creation process from freedom at the highest level. So when you want to create at the highest level, I just described to you what that looks like. I'm in the thick of it. I know this is going to happen time and time again. And because I've created this, because I've talked about it, because this podcast episode is out there, not only will I be able to circle back to it and kind of glean strength from the wisdom of the things that I've shared, but also I will be able to recognize, okay, this is just the process. This is exactly where you need to be and nothing's gone wrong. All right, you guys, I hope that was helpful for you this week. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week and I will catch you guys next time. We'll see ya. Take care. Bye-bye.